Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good to see everyone. I hope that this year of 2023 for all of us is a year of a collegial working relationship between council and staff members, and what we accomplish here at the end of the day is for the benefit of the residents of Waterloo Region. So welcome to our first committee meeting of 2023. And I'd like to invite Julie to do the roll call now.
Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Regrets from Councillor Craig. Councillor Deutschman. Chair Erb.
Present.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Hunick.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett.
Present.
Councillor McCabe.
Present.
Councillor Nowak. Councillor Salonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Vanvik.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you. As we begin this meeting, we're again reminded that many of our homes and places of employment are situated on the land that is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe and neutral people. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection to Waterloo Region, and we also recognize the contributions Indigenous peoples have made in shaping and strengthening this community. We are grateful for the opportunity to live and work here and reaffirm our collective commitment to keep the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real and intentional in our region. Are there any pecuniary acts or conflicts of interest that anyone wants to declare of committee? None? We have no presentations from staff. However, we do have a delegation that registered at the last minute, who I think is online, if I'm correct. Is she present and has been admitted? The delegation is Sandra Dietrich Bell, who is the CEO of One Roof and Youth Services. Welcome, Sandy. Happy New Year. This is not a first for you, but just for procedurally, I remind you of a couple of the guidelines for delegations that we do not particularly care for people interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, that there be no derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others. We don't want you to be turning off your camera at inappropriate times. There's no room for hate speech or defamatory comments. And so we would invite you to, you have 5 minutes, and invite you to make your presentation. And thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to thank council members for the opportunity to speak today about the security needs around One Roof Youth Services. As you may already be aware, One Roof supports youth who are homeless or at risk of homelessness between the ages of 12 and 25. One Roof is the only youth-specific agency in Waterloo Region that offers day and evening programs, shelter beds, outreach, food security, medical support, mental health and addiction services, prevention and diversion programs by way of our host home program, and then more recently, supportive housing build that housed 44 youth, primarily from the region's prioritization access to housing supports or PATHs list. We are open 24/7, 365. Our shelter is currently an 18-bed co-ed one with an open concept, meaning no individual rooms. Our agency strives to address the needs of youth along the continuum that is homelessness, from prevention to affordable housing. I'm proud to say that our prevention program, known as Host Homes, has garnered national attention, and I've been working with agencies as far away as British Columbia and the Northwest Territories to recreate our model for preventing youth from ever entering shelter. Our hope locally is to expand services eventually into Cambridge in order to ensure that youth are able to have the support they need in their own community. One Roof is a Waterloo Regional Support Service, but to date, we're only able to offer outreach services in Cambridge and not our other programs, such as the shelter bed or host homes or mental health and addictions. One Roof does not receive any ministry funding and relies solely on grants, donations, and foundations to continue our work. One Roof owns what can best be described as a campus-like group of properties. They consist of 1306 King, 1314 King, 35, 39, and 43 Sheldon Avenue. Our hope is to, I lost my place. Because we're working with some of the most vulnerable people in the region, we have historically made every effort to ensure that only youth within our age mandate access our services and our property. At One Roof, we track what we call critical incidences. Critical incidences is an occurrence that often involves violence or drug sales, sex trafficking, grooming. It may be an overdose or an opioid poisoning, threats of bodily harm or death that are deemed credible made to staff or youth. And most critical incidences ultimately result in a no trespass order and involve Waterloo Regional Police. I've been the CEO of One Roof for almost 18 years. And in that time, I can count on one hand the number of critical incidences we've encountered involving adults. However, in December of 2022, we experienced 22 critical incidences that were the direct result of adults on our property. As mentioned, historically, we've denied access to the property to adults because it was felt that our services being youth-specific meant that there's no need for adults to be around the youth who are seeking our support. Part of our mission statement is to maintain the safety and security of those we provide services to. We have youth shelters and services that are specific to youth for a reason. Admittedly, when we opened our 44-unit supportive housing unit, we were mandated by the RTA to allow adult guests of tenants to access. However, in anticipation of potential issues, we developed strict protocols pertaining to what adults are on site, how long they're there, and where they are when they are on site. One of these policies requires that invited guests remain in the youth's unit and sign in. We're finding that many of the critical and non-critical issues we're experiencing actually involve adults milling about the campus. Many are not invited guests, but have made their way onto our property to try to engage with vulnerable and impressionable young people. Unfortunately, we believe that much of the increased adult presence is related to the opening of the Schwaben Club up the street from us. Our request today is for Council to consider recommending funding to provide security services at One Roof Youth Services. During the pandemic, we were forced to hire an outside agency to help with shift coverage. Our experience clearly demonstrated that youth did not appreciate having non-One Roof staff attempting to provide any type of support to them. The youth have come to trust One Roof and our staff and simply do not take kindly to what they consider outsiders or temporary help. For this reason, we're asking for funding to hire our own security, not an outside service. These new hires would act in the capacity of security, most definitely, but would also be seen as part of the shift team, and youth would come to know them as One Roof staff. As mentioned, since the opening of the shelter at the former Schwaben Club, there's been a noticeable increase in critical incidences involving adults, both on our property and in our immediate neighborhood. The foot traffic down King Street has increased and adults are finding their way onto our property. My staff are fully taxed in terms of working with the youth. Mental health crises are on the rise. Substance use concerns have drastically increased. Overdoses and opioid poisonings have reached record numbers in our community, and they simply do not have the time or the expertise to deal with the added issues that come with adults wandering around the property. When we first arrived at our new location, we faced a great deal of NIMBY. We've worked very hard with our neighbors to alleviate their concerns. Things had calmed down and we were finally feeling accepted, but since the opening of the Schwaben Club, our neighborhood complaints have spiked again, and neighbors are coming to us with concerns of trespass, theft, loitering, of which are not our clients, but adults. It's making it increasingly difficult to appease the neighbors and help them feel safe. They're asking for increased security, and so are the staff and the youth around our campus. The neighbors are not the only ones. In discussion with Sarah Castleman at the sexual assault...
Sandy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Your 5 minutes are up, so I'm wondering if you can bring it to a close soon.
Yeah, certainly. Our concern lies mainly around sex trafficking, and Sarah Castleman has shared that SAS reported 218 sex trafficking cases, 47% under the age of 18, 74% under the age of 24. And that has grown significantly in 2021 or 2022 to 61 cases. So it's a big increase. So basically what we're asking for is to help us break the cycle of homelessness. We need folks to feel safe, and we can't do that unless we can have a security team that is ensuring that the adults remain where they're supposed to be, and that's not on our campus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of committee members to Ms. Dietrich Bell? Councillor Redmond.
Thank you. My apologies. I got fast off the draw. Sandy, thanks for presenting this. Have you approached Waterloo Regional staff previously, specifically on this issue? And have you had conversations with the Waterloo Regional Police Service on this issue?
Yes, I presented actually a budget to regional staff to hire security, and was told that there is no money available. And I've also had regular communications with Waterloo Regional Police. We have a member on our board of directors. And I've also spoken to the working center about, if there's any way that they could work with the folks at the Schwaben Club to just sort of encourage them not to come on our property. But our critical incidences continue to grow.
And when it's appropriate, Chair, I'd be interested to hear a response from staff after the delegation has answered questions.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Sorry, I was going to ask the same questions as Chair Redmond, so I'll wait for staff's reply.
Okay. Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I can definitely see the need for the security. I'm also concerned about the youth in Cambridge, and I know I've been in contact with some homeless youth, and they are reluctant to, like many people, to cross the highway from Cambridge to Kitchener. And are there any plans in the future of opening a facility for youth in Cambridge?
I actually have proposals into the region for that as well, and they have been declined.
Okay, thank you.
I saw your name here, Councillor Deutschmann, but have you since withdrawn?
Yeah, I was just going to wait till staff commented and then make comments after about next steps, just to inquire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, Mr. Sweeney, do you want to respond?
Councillor Leggett first.
Pardon?
Councillor Leggett first.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Councillor Leggett, you have your hand up online? Pardon?
Sorry, yes, I do.
Go ahead.
I'm actually on vacation, so I'm sorry I'm not there today. We have that same problem in Cambridge with around bridges, so I understand it 100%. Do you have an optimum vision of the security that you'd be looking for, as well as a minimum level? Like, where do you see this happening?
Yeah, I submitted a proposal to the regional staff to hire 4 to 5 security workers that would work 12-hour shifts. And as I said, join sort of our staff team versus having folks come in. And in conversations with the neighbors, we used to have our own staff sort of just walk the perimeter of our property at the church beside us and just sort of encourage people to move along or come back onto site if they were youth. And so that would be part of the role and responsibility of the security staff as well, is to help the neighborhood feel that, we're noticing and that we're doing our best to engage with folks and either move them along or direct them as to, where services are available for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sweeney.
Yes, through you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank Sandy for coming here today. I've had a number of conversations with Sandy, who keeps reminding me that as much as we continuously talk about the challenges of chronic homelessness in our adult community, we cannot take our eye off the ball on the challenges, the unique challenges facing our youth. So thank you for that. I guess if I could maybe address the delegation, the points in the delegation, first of all, in a specific and then a more general sense, that I'm happy to answer any questions, and staff are here as well. One of the challenges that we've had with the King Street shelter is around the request for security around the site. So we built into that contract the provision of 24/7 security on the site, which we have done for those of you who have been part of these conversations in the previous council as well, with respect to 100 Victoria and even at 150 Main. So on those sites that we have ownership or legal responsibility for, we've taken those steps. We have been asked numerous times by local businesses, local residents, and others to also provide security across the entire neighborhood. And as you can imagine, our funding envelope does not have the capacity to respond to that. So it is also a tricky situation. With security, we have a lot of requests around that. It is not a panacea for the challenges that we face in any site that we provide these types of services. I do, however, want to acknowledge Sandy's comment around a potential model that would be more in-house rather than contracted out. And as we go through the budget cycle, we do not have additional resources put into the budget that will be coming before you next week for additional requests around security. However, that part of that cycle involves negotiations and conversations with our providers. One Roof is a regionally funded provider, as you know. So as part of that conversation, I'm happy to take this back with staff and work with Sandy and her team to discuss how we can ensure that not only the provision of the services at One Roof are what the youth and the staff need, but also that the safety and security of the youth who access that and Sandy's team in the neighborhood is accounted for within that contract.
Thank you. Councillor Urbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Erb, and thanks Sandy for coming in. I guess more a comment. I really just want to speak to Mr. Sweeney's response there, and I'm glad the staff will take it back. I guess I would say that I think for all of us in the three cities that have service delivery providers and partners that are working with us, each of these facilities have impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods. I think, Sandy would even acknowledge that One Roof has impacts on the surrounding neighborhood as well. And so I really do think that it's important, and I've said this before, that as a region, we build our partnership agreements and our funding envelopes in a way that recognizes that if these residential facilities are going to be successful, they need to be both successful for the residents who need the support as well as the surrounding community. And so it really becomes imperative that particularly as the needs grow, that we have the resources in place to ensure that not only is there safety and security on the property, but that there's also the necessary supports to ensure safety and security of the surrounding neighborhood. Or, otherwise, I think, we'll see what we've seen at times in the past, which has been pushback from surrounding neighborhoods. And I think today more than ever, we're going to need more support than we're going to need pushback. Thank you.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what struck me with respect to this particular issue is the youth situation here and the concern for youth in that facility. We're dealing with very difficult issues with homelessness, the most marginalized people that are having difficult times, it is a very difficult situation for all of us, and we want to help everyone and as many as we can. But in this particular situation, I was struck by the high number of incidences that occurred in December that Sandy was talking about versus her historical experiences. And given that we're dealing with a very vulnerable group, youth in our community, I would like to see staff meet with Sandy, see what options are available, and come back with maybe some options for us to consider as part of this budget process. I would be surprised that we couldn't find some funding to assist the youth in our community. I would be shocked if we couldn't find some funding somewhere with respect to assist in this situation. So if it requires a motion to move forward, I don't know what the next step is going to be, but I'd move a motion to have staff review this and come back with some options for council to consider, unless that is already what staff is doing through Commissioner Sweeney.
Okay, before we deal with you have your hand up, Mr. Lochner, and Councillor Foxton wants to make a comment as well.
Okay.
Do you want to respond specifically?
Yeah, I'll come back later.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I would prefer it to be direction to staff than a motion, and also allow us to consider the broader requests that have come today. So I heard concern about Cambridge. And if we could take this away and look at the broader picture and bring the full picture back to council through the budget process, I think that would be more helpful, in addition to Peter's commitment to meet directly with Sandy on this specific issue.
Just to clarify, I fully support looking at the Cambridge issue, but I don't want this issue of security on this site because of the Schwaben setup to be missed as part of all of that. I would definitely want that to be considered. The other thing I'll just mention, and something that I will want to bring forward after budget and later on to discuss, is Sandy mentioned in her presentation the RTA, which is the Residential Tenancy Act. And Sandy, in my discussions with her, had mentioned, and they have a lawyer on their board, and a lawyer taken a look at that, and there's a question about whether this facility should be subject to the Residential Tenancy Act, because the issue then becomes, when youth become adults or adults are on site, what does this facility do? If people don't move on, suddenly they move from a youth facility to an adult facility, and because they're subject to the Residential Tenancy Act, they are limited in what they can do. However, apparently, based on an opinion from the lawyer on their board, there's an exemption to applying the Residential Tenancy Act to this facility. And that's something that I don't want to, I'm just raising it as on the horizon, and something for later on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. What I find disheartening a bit is the lack of police stepping in. I thought this would be definitely something the police would do, especially on the issues of drug trafficking, human trafficking. I'm shocked at this, that we would have to provide security when we have a really good police department. And maybe some of our members on council that are on the police board can ask that it revisited how they do services, because to me, this is an action where if every situation like this and every agency is having problems and we're hiring more and more security, then where does policing fall in? I find it confusing because I think this definitely falls under their mandate. So I would ask the police board members to please bring this forward, because I think this should be a police issue. I think they should be called every single time. And if they're deterred away enough by policing, then it may rectify the problem. But because they're not being chased away by the policing, I think it enables the problem. Thank you.
Councillor Hunick.
Just a comment to follow up on what Sue has said. From my perspective, it seems like to provide security is kind of an upstream way of dealing with the fact that, like, we want to prevent incidences before they happen. And so that makes good sense, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Verbanovic?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Herb. And I really wanted to build on the comments that Councillor Hunick just made, because I think, we need to remember that policing is one tool in our community toolbox of dealing with these issues. And if there are other alternatives, less costly alternatives and more effective alternatives, which are often are upstream, then those are options that should be looked at. We need to make sure that we have appropriate resourcing in place with Waterloo Regional Police Services, and for a growing community that will require some additional investment. But we also know that it's important that we look at the full range of options for dealing with these kinds of things. I did want to just clarify one thing, because in his comments, Mr. Lochner just sort of referred to addressing the concerns that were raised by Councillor Liggett, and I just want to make sure that the concerns that I raised, which is the surrounding neighborhood issues of all of these facilities in Cambridge, in Kitchener, in Waterloo, will be something that is being looked at.
Mr. Lochner?
Yeah, so to be clear, I was referring to all the comments that were made, and agree with Councillor Verbanevic's point that this was, Peter's committed to meet with Sandy directly, but we also heard concerns about, as Mayor Verbanevic said, Waterloo, Cambridge, and I think Councillor Liggett raised concerns in Cambridge as well. So we'd prefer as staff to look at the whole picture and bring a comprehensive picture back to council and then seek direction.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just want to make a comment and thoughts around the requests for security. We need to really be clear on defining what that is, and that it isn't a model of more policing. Again, it's costly to our budget, as was said, but also that, police tend to criminalize those who are the most vulnerable. So I'm very conscious of that and looking into that. I do believe that this is a broader issue as well. So looking at it from a regional perspective, because there's support needed throughout, and having staff look into that, especially if it's going to impact budget, is probably the avenue that needs to be looked at this point, especially given the time that we're in right now with budget. Okay, those are just my thoughts, but I'm very conscious of saying more policing because of the cost and because of the stigma that's associated within this vulnerable community. Thank you.
Councillor Redmond. Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. I debated whether I was going to ask the delegation this, or maybe I will just pose it as part of the considerations for staff. I think these are really important issues. I think they're pervasive. I really appreciate Sandy coming to talk about One Roof, but we've seen similar situations even in the unsanctioned encampments where Family and Children's Services went in to apprehend youth. So there are other services and other agencies that are funded appropriately by other levels of government that should be part of this. And I did take note, Sandy, that you were talking about the fact that you wanted in-house security. And I hear that, and it's one of the reasons why I asked about the relationship with WRPS, because I would wonder what the training is. I know that we've hired outside security when we felt that it was warranted in other situations. So I would wonder what their authority is and what their training is. So as much as these are very legitimate concerns and ones that I think we need to address as a community, there are other agencies that need to partner to make sure that not only the people at the facility of One Roof get the services that they need, but that the community feels safe as well. So I look forward to staff looking at the 360-degree aspects of this suggestion, as well as implications for other places, knowing that we have finite resources, and are we now funding this resource that somebody else in the community might be resourced appropriately to supply and take away from our capacity to serve the most vulnerable in the community?
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you as well, Sandy, for coming in for your delegation. Just partly picking up on Councillor Foxton's points. That's where my head was at, and I understand there's issues around the stigmatization of the police responding, but I also was under the impression that they were looking to hire some other staff. Mental health workers or social workers or adding some other capacity to their team in order to better respond to some of situations like these and to work with others in our community. So I'm to echo what Councillor Foxton said about can we what's happening in terms of the our Waterloo police resources, because I think that's where some of the answer lies. Maybe not in a not in a traditional police response, but with some people in different capacities. The other question that I have, and I take everyone's points about, we'll look at this through the budget process and do a full 360, and I appreciate that, because I think it is a larger issue that we have to continue to think about. But I'm also cognizant of what Ms. Bell said, Dietrich Bell said, that she's had 0 incidences really for 18 years and 22 incidences in the past month. And so our budget process is going to take another month or 2. And I'm concerned about this if there's something that could be done more immediately, because 22 incidences in 1 month is quite significant. And it sounds like the problem is not going away immediately. So I, again, appreciate the need to look at this on a more holistic and strategic manner, but also very concerned about what's happening, between now and then. So wondered if there was any potential recourse or more immediate response we can provide.
Through you, Chair. Councillor McCabe, thank you. My first response is I'd appreciate the opportunity to connect with Sandy to understand what those incidences are. I'm not aware of them, and we haven't chatted for a while, so that would be my first response. And if I can also just pick up on Councillor James's comment around the use of security, and as we think about the shelter system, the supportive housing system, everything that we do, I think we have to be really cognizant of where our resources are going. For every dollar we spend on security to solve a potential challenge is a dollar that we can't put somewhere else. So I think we do have to look at it holistically. We have to build resilience into our system, that it is resistant to trafficking and other criminal elements, while not also criminalizing the behavior and the potentially criminalizing the behavior and the place where people choose to live. So I can't give you a specific answer. My commitment is with staff. We'll connect with Sandy as soon as possible and talk about what we can do in the short term. Okay.
Councillor Salin.
Mr. Sweeney actually covered some of what I was going to ask, but just in general, I ask that when staff come back during the budgeting, when we're looking at our homelessness plan and our plan to end chronic homelessness, that we can look at enveloping full services, which could include security, because we can't be building multiple new ways to address homelessness without having plans to support the programs such as One Roof that are already working. I don't want to see them be detrimented as we're trying to continue the next best new innovative way to solve solutions. I think that we do need to be looking at them in a whole life cycle of the project, as well as on what Mayor Verbanevik was saying. We need to be getting community support, and the community needs to feel safe. And also going off of what Sandy was saying in her presentation, in order to break the cycle of homelessness, we all know that people need to feel safe. So security, I think, needs to be something that we look at in the budget when we're looking at addressing homelessness, whether that be through some police supports and private security. I don't know the answer, but I would like to see some of that shown in the budgeting process. Thank you.
Councillor Schatz.
Thank you. I have to learn to press the right buttons when I want to get in line. Thank you, and just I really don't have a whole lot to say that hasn't been said, but just to pull it together and around, I think there's a whole lot, a number of different levels of security that the community's looking at. There's traffic, there's this kind of security that we're talking about here, and then there's the intense policing that we ask police to do. And so I think we need to really, both at the Police Services Board and here at the region, look at what that means for our community and how can we be maybe innovative how we address those concerns so that the community feels safe and is safe.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Chair. How long is the Schwaben shelter plan to be in place for?
The initial plan is that the contract with the working center is up to 24 months. It is part of our interim housing solution package, and so that is the current plan. That site is scheduled for redevelopment at any event, but the current planning is up to 2 years.
Okay, so it'll be there for 2 years.
Correct.
Okay, so I think
a year and a half.
That heightens the urgency of this situation for the One Roof group, especially if they have to deal with this for 2 years and they've had 22 incidences in December. It's a very urgent situation. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I think, just so we're clear, there's direction that this be taken back to staff for a holistic approach as to what it will, and then come back in through the budget session. Thanks, Sandy, for presenting. Very valuable conversation to have, and thanks for raising the issue with us.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, we're on to the item number 6 on the agenda, which is part of the consent agenda, and it's the under Health and Safety and Inclusive Communities and Interim Housing Solutions Implementation Update. Are there, if there are no questions from staff, we simply will approve the this part of the consent agenda item, which is the only item on the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Schantz, seconded by Councillor Harris. All those in favor indicate so by pressing your yes button. Where's mine?
In favor.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a question, Councillor Lickett?
No, I was just saying in favor. I don't have a button to, if I have a button, I don't know virtually where it is to vote.
Okay, thumbs up here. We've got you recorded as supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just if I may, on related to the housing file, looking outside today, it's hard to imagine with the weather like it is today, other than the slippery sidewalks and parking lots, what the weather was like 2 weeks ago, 3 or 4 days just before Christmas. And we were warned of epic snow conditions and wind, which actually the weather forecasts were correct for a change. But what I want to do is I want to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that staff did in the 2 or 3 days leading up to that bad weather in enhancing our shelter systems and making sure that those who are living in our community who are unsheltered had the opportunity to come in. And they worked tirelessly, and as council members know, we were kept up to date 2 or 3 times a day on the progress that they were making. During that time, we had approximately 30 shelter beds that were vacant in the shelter system, and staff, along with our service providers, were able to secure another 33 beds that would be available for those in the community that were unsheltered. And they worked and they worked and they worked to make it happen. So we had approximately 60 beds in that time of very, very unstable weather for people to be housed. And so as many of us were rushing around doing last-minute things to get ready for Christmas, our staff were working around the clock, literally, to make sure that these people who are unsheltered had the safety. And along with the service providers, they were visiting those sites regularly, 2 or 3 times a day, to try and convince people to come in. So to Mr. Sweeney and Kellyanne and Ryan, who are here, and the rest of your colleagues that may not be present, thanks so much on behalf of the community, and particularly those who are living unsheltered, for the work that you did to make sure that they were safe, and continuing to have those spaces available, and the other work that we're doing to try and end chronic homelessness in our community. So thank you. Councillor Deutschman.
Yeah, thanks. Just, I echo your comments with respect to all of that. One thing, though, that was interesting to me was it was good to see the announcement about the warming centers recently, but I would like to see more maybe come back to council to better explain, because it seemed to me it was sort of like till 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and is the 24/7 or the 24-hour warming center concept possible when you're in those sorts of situations? Because, you know, the weather doesn't stop at 5 o'clock, and I was just curious about that. Maybe at a future date we could hear more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Councillor Deutschman, yes, you know, there was some learnings there as well, for me personally, but also for the organization as well. Then we've committed to, you know, to looking at that. I got asked yesterday if I considered the plan a success, and my response is I won't use the word success on this file until there's not a single person sleeping outside. So we've got some work to do still.
Okay, on to the regular agenda. There's no other. Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Vanovic.
Thanks. And unfortunately, eScript doesn't seem to allow us to click in on sort of in between items. So just on that issue, and I would echo your comments. Staff certainly did do a lot of work to try to respond to that. I think it happened at a time of the year that sort of all of the stars aligned in terms of challenges, the weather, the holidays that saw, you know, pretty much it's the one holiday in the year that almost sees everything closed for a period of time, and so it did present its share of challenges. Just on your last comment there, Mr. Sweeney, I presume you'll convene a meeting with the area municipalities to do a debrief, particularly those that operate cooling and warming centers and so on, to see what the lessons learned are from it, and how we can make sure that we're coordinating as effectively as possible.
Yes, absolutely. Any review would include all of our partners at area municipalities and our service partners as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, no more hands up on the screen. So nothing else on the regular agenda. No information or correspondence. Nothing on the tracking list. Any other business from committee members? Our next meeting is on February the 7th. Do I need a motion to adjourn? Yeah. Could I have a notice or a motion to adjourn? Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Harris. All those in favor? Contrary? Carried. Oh, I guess we got to use our buttons here. Sorry. We got them? Okay, good. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.